U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. has been talking about a universal vaccine, and I'm seeing a lot of people feeling afraid and betrayed, believing that all vaccines are bad. So I wanted to take a look at what he is proposing because, like you, hopefully, I continue to critically observe what is happening within our government. It's unfortunate for the current administration. The world is finally awakening and scrutinizing them so intensely, but it's a necessary part when you expose corruption, and I think that this administration is up to the job based on the performance so far. Whether you love Trump or you hate him, you can't accuse him of doing nothing. Of course, his effectiveness is only as good as the team supporting him, and he knows it. I believe there is a longer history and a stronger bond between members of this administration than is apparent. They were all chosen. I just don't know how far back. So I want to assess this newest push, as some see it, for a new vaccine, which understandably met with suspicion. So let's look at the language and intent of this request by RFK Jr. First, we must understand that he is introducing this universal vaccine as an alternative to mRNA vaccines, which is clearly where the money is going to in pharmaceutical research. Second, this universal vaccine would mimic natural immunity and be effective against multiple respiratory viruses, including coronaviruses and influenza. This means that one vaccine can replace an entire series of vaccines that someone might choose to absorb into their body. I know that sounds a bit graphic, but it is exactly what we are doing with everything that we put into our body, and we must have a conscious awareness, respect, and caution regarding this undisputed fact. Our organs, and indeed many cells in our body, are sucking these drugs into their innermost workings, and in most cases, silently deals with trying to eliminate them. With that understanding, let's objectively look at this proposed universal vaccine, which would replace mRNA vehicles, and by replacing many different vaccines, it would lessen the cumulative effect of any untoward additives in the bevy of vaccines that children now receive. It's necessary to understand exactly what mRNA is before we can decide whether we should continue along this path of drug development or find other ways, which is exactly what Kennedy and his team are trying to do. Messenger RNA, or mRNA, is just what it sounds like. It is synthetic RNA molecules that send communication, instructing our cells to produce specific proteins. In the case of vaccines, this involves telling the body to manufacture the antigens that you don't want to catch for the purpose of triggering your body to initiate an immune response. Okay, let me repeat that. It makes your body manufacture what you are trying to avoid. Of course, we are told that it's a very small amount, but I kind of look at the body like AI technology. The body learns our preferences by what we tell it to do, so forcing it to make a virus or bacteria is quite confusing to the subconscious workings of immunity. To stay connected to this subconscious control over the body, think of the placebo effect, where your body responds to what you believe about a treatment. That's simplified, but the placebo effect is a video of its own. First emerging with COVID-19 vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer, there is now research into manufacturing these proteins for diseases like cancer and genetic disorders, which scares the heck out of me, and the use of mRNA should be evaluated for each desired use and each drug that they want to enhance with it. The reason that mRNA became so popular during the pandemic is because it allegedly allowed rapid development without using live viruses. Since mRNA is a vehicle to deliver drug more extensively, there are serious concerns related to systemic biodistribution, which in a nutshell means that it takes it to more places in your body. In a society where gluttony is natural, we might think more is more, but it's not. Let me demonstrate. One of the most difficult things in cancer treatment is cell selectivity. which means getting these toxic drugs only to the cancer cells so as to minimize damage to healthy cells. The goal is to control distribution of a drug to only the areas that need treating. This should be a foundation related to the distribution of any drugs. Remember, first do no harm. It doesn't say blow up everything in sight to be sure you get the diseased cells. I mean, what good is a drug that fixes one thing if it destroys other parts of our body? So this quest for extensive drug distribution triggers valid concerns including off-target effects from systemic biodistribution, long-term persistence of mRNA, or proteins leading to unintended immune activation or inflammation. Additionally, there are stability concerns requiring cold storage. Lastly, risks of immunogenic responses which could limit repeated use or exacerbate autoimmune conditions has already been identified. So what is this universal vaccine that RFK Jr. is proposing? Well, a universal vaccine, as described by Kennedy, aims to provide broad protection against multiple strains of viruses, such as various coronaviruses like SARS-CoV-2 and influenza, by targeting conserved elements of these viruses that don't mutate rapidly. You know how they want you to continue to take annual boosters and vaccine updates for the specific strain of mutating viruses, which are changing all the time? For example, rather than those seasonal flu shots, a universal vaccine would offer longer-lasting protection against existing and emerging variants, which reduces the need to reformulate the drug. Kennedy has stated it could be effective against not only coronaviruses but also flu, emphasizing a shift toward safer, broader vaccine platforms that remain effective as the viruses mutate. Kennedy and the Department of Health and Human Services have indicated a preference for non-mRNA technologies, which in my opinion is a smart and rational recommendation considering how they work. His preference is to get back to traditional flu shots before they started playing around with them. In May 2025, the National Institutes of Health, under Kennedy, announced investment in a universal vaccine platform to develop vaccines using whole killed viruses to protect against multiple influenza and coronavirus strains. This approach is quite different from the mRNA vaccines, which instruct your cells to manufacture a specific viral protein, such as the spike protein for SARS-CoV-2. I have always maintained that they are screwing with our immune systems, essentially forcing them to create autoimmune conditions. Imagine teaching and instructing our own bodies to create foreign antigens for the purpose of making our immunity stronger. This is not the design of the Creator. It is man interfering with something that realistically he knows very little about. Kennedy is a vocal and well-known vaccine skeptic, and in August, $500 million in mRNA vaccine contracts were canceled because the technology purportedly failed to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID-19 and flu. He wants to redirect the money to develop this universal vaccine, which he claims would have a stronger safety record and will be more transparent in its development, but plans are still being formulated. So, when it comes to scientific feasibility, experts point out that creating a universal vaccine has been a long-standing goal in infectious disease research, but it still remains out of reach. Many scientists believe that mRNA technology is the fastest route to developing such a vaccine because of its adaptability and the speed at which it can be produced. However, fast has nothing to do with safety and is not a priority in drug development. Many years ago, it was decided that two critical factors must be proven: safety and efficacy. So convoluting these important priorities with arguments of development speed or profit potential have no business in the drug approval process. Kennedy's rejection of mRNA platforms has drawn a lot of criticism from vaccine proponents like Dr. Paul Offit and Dr. Mike Osterholm, who worked for Biden during COVID-19. In my opinion, RFK Jr.'s push for a new approach to vaccines, which he's calling the universal vaccine, is innovative and responsible medicine simultaneously. We could see some great benefits if it focuses on making vaccines as safe as possible and effective for everyone. This is why the FDA was created. It was not created to be controlled by industry, but to be independent from any financial incentives. By creating a new advisory committee on immunization practices with experts who aren't tied to big drug companies, Kennedy's plan could make sure vaccines are tested thoroughly and that the results are shared openly with the public. This transparency could be created in a simplified manner in layman's terms to help people become better informed of the risks of pharmaceuticals. Only then can they make informed risk-benefit health decisions, especially if they know exactly what's in them and how they were tested. For instance, focusing on safety and preventative care could reduce prescription drug use by 20 to 50% for various conditions. Numerous studies indicate that type 2 diabetes patients who adopt strict dietary changes and regular physical activity can often lower or even eliminate their need for glucose-lowering medications. Hypertension and high cholesterol are also highly responsive to sustained lifestyle improvements, with many patients reducing or stopping medications under medical supervision. Stress reduction practices, such as meditation or mindfulness, further improve outcomes in heart disease, anxiety, and depression, often decreasing reliance on long-term prescriptions. While results vary depending on the individual and condition, consistent evidence suggests that large portions of chronic disease prescriptions could be safely reduced when patients commit to structured, long-term lifestyle changes under professional guidance. How do you think Big Pharma feels about that? Imagine 50% of chronically ill people stop using their prescription drugs as a result of a health-supporting lifestyle. Not only are those 50% of sales lost today, it's probable that most of them will be lost forever due to long-term changes in their lifestyles. In my opinion, there has been an irresponsible push for inadequately studied drugs, wrapped in a pandemic fear narrative. I've been in the medical field since 1983 in pharmacies, research institutes conducting studies, and in government regulation, so I've seen a lot of drugs come onto the market. But what I have seen in recent years downright scares me. I remember when fast-track drug approval was made available to drug manufacturers. It was during the early days of AIDS, when we had no treatment for a catastrophic illness that was highly communicable and caused imminent death. When we have no option and someone is going to die a painful death, there is only an upside to fast-track. Basically, there is benefit with little risk of making it worse. That isn't what happened with the drugs fast-tracked in COVID. We had flu, and we treated people who were not dying and weren't even sick with a drug that had not been put through the full approval process. That is how far the law was stretched, and then to add injury to insult, it was mandated. Unlike lifestyle interventions, which have minimal risks and proven long-term benefits, rushed vaccine approvals might lead to harmful side effects, such as the crippling myocarditis found to be associated with the COVID-19 vaccines. Prioritizing safe, evidence-based lifestyle changes over quick-fix pharmaceutical solutions ensures better health outcomes and protects public health without industry-driven shortcuts. Drug companies might push for faster approvals to make money quickly, but that's not what the FDA is supposed to do. Its job is to keep people safe, not to worry about costs or speed. Rushing vaccines for non-deadly conditions has caused people to lose trust in doctors and scientists, with good cause. Instead, Kennedy's idea of being super careful with safety and sharing all the data openly is a smarter way to protect everyone while working on ways to decrease the big vaccine schedule that our children are subjected to. Prescription drugs cannot simply be discontinued. Mankind must be weaned off toxic drugs, most often under medical supervision, so don't buy into the narrative that Kennedy lied about everything and is pushing vaccines. That is a fear-based narrative started by private interests. Kennedy's initiative could strengthen vaccine safety by prioritizing rigorous testing, transparency, and public trust for those who choose pharmaceutical intervention. Fast-tracking new technologies such as mRNA for non-lethal conditions risks undermining these goals by compromising safety for profit and speed, and this is simply unacceptable from a rational medical standpoint. The FDA must remain focused on evidence-based approvals, free from external industry and political pressures. Heck, we are suppressed for forward-looking speech about medicines, but the powers that be can force us to inject what they deem is necessary by their paid experts. The corruption in the system has gone so far from the goal and purpose of medicine. A balanced approach would involve leveraging Kennedy's transparency push while maintaining strict, unhurried safety protocols to ensure vaccines are both safe and effective, while being administered with caution and encouraging natural wellness through education and accompanying transparency. So don't turn on RFK Jr. just yet and realize that Big Pharma won't stop fighting until we finish draining the swamp.